First week of fall camp is now complete. So, who should we be watching for as we get closer to the season? That coming up next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Morning, everyone, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase.
Welcome in to the Locked On Nebraska podcast. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is here, as you can all see and hear. It is the first full week of August at Nebraska's preseason camp. Things are in full swing. The Huskers broke out the full pads on Saturday night. Also, were fully dressed in football uniforms.
Nice.
So we are 3 weeks and 3 days away, Connor, from the opener at Arrowhead Stadium. It is getting very close. And since we last talked, a lot has happened. The Big Ten Network set up shop Friday in Lincoln on their tour of Big Ten campuses. Lots of observations from the crew that included Dave Revson, Howard Griffith, Jake Butt. Then on Saturday, Nebraska had Fan Day inside the Hawks Center before an evening practice at Memorial Stadium in front of about 2,500 ticket-buying fans. So in comparison to May, June, and July, we're getting like a month's worth of stuff now packed into just a couple of days.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's been a lot, I think, to pick up over not only just, the last couple days here over the weekend, but throughout the first week of camp. I think the first week, as far as how it's covered by us, you kind of just figure out, you get a general sense of who's where. And then you kind of start to get to that, it's almost a cut down. Mitch, you asked the question in the press conference on Saturday about you get the 53 and the 53 and sort of how do you split that out and when does it happen? So I think we all go through that process sort of in our heads too. But, as we're going to talk about here, there's a bunch of guys who are undoubtedly, they've, whether it be brought up without being asked by the coach or obviously people have seen, a lot of people have seen Nebraska practice now. Who I think stock is up and maybe that we should be watching out for as we get closer to the season. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through some of those guys to start things off today. I see the list that Mitch sort of wrote out here. I got one or two that aren't on there. Yeah. Who I think are stock up.
I thought it was, first of all, yeah, when the names come up of players and they're not asked, when the coaches are not asked, hey, how is Keona Davis looking? And then they talk about Keona Davis. That's one thing. But if a player or a coach just says, oh, somebody I want you to hear about is Keona Davis, there's a lot more value in that. So sometimes you don't know if you're just reading the report that all the media outlets produce after these sessions that we've had now with Matt Rhule a couple of times. Various players. We heard from Ja'Cory Barney and Rocco Spindler, who were both, I think they were both put in that spot on Thursday to talk to the media because Nebraska chooses for the most part who is going to be out front. Those two Nebraska understood and knew going in. They didn't have to be told this. This is just who they are. We're going to speak very glowingly and with a lot of confidence about what they had seen and expected from this team. So you had Rocco Spindler come out and say that he expects the Nebraska offensive line to win the Joe Moore Award, which goes to the best offensive line in the country. And Ja'Cory Barney said, I'm going to lead the nation in punt returns. So that's all great. Take that very much with a grain of salt. Do we expect Nebraska to have the best offensive line in the country? I mean, for me,
I do not. I do not. Yeah.
But this confidence that we're hearing from the players is is important, I think, for
Yeah.
the rest of the team as they get further into camp.
It's like they're far from the first people in the world to say that I think my teammates are the best and I think our team is the best. And that sentiment about the offensive line was repeated on the BTN show when they came through town on Friday by Emmett Johnson and Dylan Raiola. And then at the open practice on Saturday, Ja'Cory Barney was heard exclaiming, we're going to be the best bleeping team in the nation, after making a play, and people heard that and they liked it. So that's yes, that is a totally normal thing for a football team to think about themselves at especially at this point in camp. Now the attitude changes a little bit in the second and third week. It gets harder. It turns into a little bit more of a slog. People start wanting to hit other people, and there's like a cut down period, like I said. So good energy the first week. I think Nebraska checked a bunch of boxes. Let's go through these guys who have been talked about here.
Like a stock up list.
Yeah. So rip a couple off here, and then we'll talk about a few of them, Mitch.
Sometimes when we have these conversations and we list players, we'll say at the beginning, this is the list, and we're excluding Dylan Raiola from this list, because if you're like most important players for Nebraska to have success in 2025, or the biggest movers in the offseason, various lists, you're just going to assume that Dylan Raiola is on it, so we'll not include him. Not on this one. Because on this list of players whose stock is on the rise as we go into the middle portions of preseason camp, like he's at the top of it for me. And this was something that I heard universally from people who watched practice in the first week, including representatives of BTN who were there all day on Friday, is that he's taken it to another level in preseason practice this year. And
that's the ground, like that. Yeah, it's great.
That's an extension of his offseason where he had a very defined list of things that Dylan was going to focus on. And like he systematically checked the boxes. Early in the offseason, it was about his physical shape and getting his body right. And he got done with that before spring practice. That was no longer a concern, and he continued to stay on top of that, and he looks very good. There was talk at the practice. Full disclosure. So I was at the media session. As you mentioned, I asked the question to Matt Rhule about the roster and how it's different this year with that kind of 53 or 57 man list that the Huskers are going to have. That's like their NFL.
Top tier.
And interestingly, like he said that it's not something that's defined within the team. It's talked about more between Rhule and Pat Stewart. Like if you're in an NFL situation, obviously it's very much there for the players, because if you're not on the 53 man roster, you're not on the active roster. In college, there's nothing like that. And so they don't have to necessarily define it in the locker room. But I was curious, and I liked Rhule's answer on that. Anyway, with Raiola, it's everyone who's around the program can see what's going on. Oh, I was going to say, full disclosure, I was there for the media session on Saturday, and then I had a long planned family event. So I did not go inside the stadium for the practice. We're relying on all of the various reports that came out of practice, but we got all kinds of reports, and everybody had opinions. And I talked to people yesterday who were there. So I think we have a decent idea of what happened. And Dylan Raiola for me is the first guy. The second guy I'd put on that list is Ja'Cory Barney being stock up. You talked about him pumping up the crowd with his comments about Nebraska being a great team, or the best team ever to play college football. And we heard from him on Thursday with his declarations about how he's going to be a great punt returner. So Ja'Cory is like a whole vibe, as the kids say. Nice. And that's what's going on with him right now. Like he's gone from just being this freshman who's in the shadows and is a playmaker to being one of the like he's a big part of the heartbeat of Nebraska football right now.
Yeah, I think so. Let me add in a third sophomore who had high expectations and is going to, has checked every single box, if not more so. That'd be Vincent Shavers on the defensive side. He is undoubtedly they talk about him like we don't have to worry about this guy. It's the same way they talk about Barney. in just the work that they put in, and then the plays that they're able to make on the field. Like when they talk about Barney, it's always it always sounds like to me is like, yeah, don't worry about Barney, just keep him kind of off to the side. He's going to produce, he's going to get better. You don't have to worry about like this developmental track or anything like that for him. Like, just he's good, right? That's
he's a football player. He's a football player, and like he's got the it factor.
Yeah, that's what it always sounds like to me when they talk about Barney. So that's a great thing to hear. So I would throw Shavers in that group. So Raiola, Barney, Shavers, and then there's all sophomores who I think have taken that next step.
Great point.
Carter Nelson, a sophomore as well. Different situation, like not as productive last year. Went through an injury in the offseason, but undoubtedly on this list, I think. So it's maybe not quite to the level of like, oh, this guy's going to be one of the best players on the team. Certainly has that ceiling, but they talk about him specifically with his body as if he's made a jump this year.
All
and I think
sophomores
from the eye test. Yeah.
All second-year sophomores that we're talking about, like all players who played as true freshmen a year ago. And there are some others that we have on this list who you could add into there, or who are not on this list but could be on this list from that same class. So that's an interesting, I would say, storyline in the shadows here.
That's their core.
During camp.
That's the core of their team. It's made up of those second-year guys at this point. Throw Keona Davis in that category too. I think there's a few more that probably are a little bit further down the list. Yeah, Will Spaghetti, another good one. But like these guys are expected to be the central focal point of what they do this year, and it's led by the quarterback and Ja'Cory Barney, a wide receiver, just steady, consistent workers.
A couple other guys from that class, and we didn't mean to make this a conversation entirely about the class of 2025, the freshman class of 2024. Yeah, this is their second year in the program, 2024. I don't know what year it is. But, and this guy I'm going to mention now, there's two of them, one on offense and one on defense. Actually, let's come back and do that. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We got two more from this emerging storyline here. Breaking news on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. We've identified the class of 2024 as very important to Nebraska's success in 2025. Two more, one on offense, one on defense after this break.
But first, a word from our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Maybe you're lagging behind a little bit to start the week here. It's time to turn up the temperature. 5 Hour Energy and 5 Hour Energy Transfusion, bringing that bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor from your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. So whether you're out on the golf course, you're sinking birdies like you're actually playing competitively, or you're just a weekend warrior, this one is for you. So some days on the course you have it, and some days you don't. This is for both, because the Transfusion is a classic golf drink, and why not turn it into just a little bit of that energy boost that you need out there on the course. Golf is all about good times with good people and, of course, good flavors. The grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and can't be used with other promotions. This code is not good on subscription orders, but whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 into 36, get that energizing boost you need to power through. Order Transfusion flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you here on a Monday. Welcome back. All right, so continuing off of the conversation we were having there, yeah, the sophomore class, the guys who played quite a bit last year, or didn't, and that's a couple guys that we're going to get to here in this section of the list, who are undoubtedly stock up, I think, in my mind, through week one. Let's start with the offensive side, because everybody wondered about what's going to happen at RB2. I mean, it is still a question that we have, to be completely honest with you. It's not a very clear picture behind Emmett Johnson at running back, but there was an injury to Quentin Ives, and then even with Ives in there, you're still kind of throwing all the names into a hat and stirring it up a little bit, depending on the day. But one guy that has popped up quite a bit is Mekhi Nelson here in this first week. And so I think, the way I see it right now, he's a real threat to be that guy at the end of camp here.
I've heard both sides of this through week one. I've heard that Nebraska has a big hole there behind Emmett Johnson, and it appears unclear what direction they're going to go. Not so much that there's a lack of talent. That's not the implication there. That's not the suggestion. It's just that it doesn't look like they have a great idea where they want to be at that RB2 spot. And I think that's a valid observation. And then I've also heard, and we got this kind of backed up from Dana Holgerson when he talked on Thursday, that Mekhi Nelson is doing some things. Like Mekhi Nelson has made a move. He's come out of the summer, and in part because the reps have been up as a result of Quentin Ives being on the sideline, Nelson looks good. And like they're very much tiptoeing into this. Dana said, I'm going to go talk to him after this interview, and I'm going to tell him that I praised him out here. Yeah. And if he gives me any kind of attitude or I see any kind of different approach from him, I'm going to kick him right in the butt.
That's good. I think, sorry, my video went out there for a second. I'll get it back. But I think he's trying to, he's trying to put him through the ringer a little bit, because from what we've heard, he has the total package. Like, I think they're trying to find a guy who could do all of the different things, pass blocking and obviously be a little bit explosive in the run game as well. So I think he's checked those boxes, so far. And then they want to say, all right, now you are that guy. Go run with it for a week. Like, I think that's what camp's for. You go into week 2 or you go into week 3 and you say, all right, let's just pretend you're the second running back this week, or let's just pretend you're the starting running back this week. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to stop working hard, and all that stuff. So I think they're putting him through the ringer purposefully over this middle portion here.
If they had a game this week, he'd be the guy that you would see go in there when Emmett Johnson needed a breather.
Yeah.
That's where I think they're at. Like, maybe by the time Cincinnati rolls around, Quentin Ives is back and he's picked up where he left off in the spring and all is good. Or maybe at that point, Isaiah Mosey has come along to the level where you can't deny that his talent, and you've got to put him out there. But I think right now it's Mekhi Nelson. Like, he's the guy who has made the biggest move to be in position as Emmett Johnson's backup for week 1. We'll see how that plays out over the next 3 weeks. And then the guy on defense that we'll bring up in this conversation, this is not one that I expected we would be saying here. But if you think back to when Jordan Ochoa was recruited to Nebraska, and he was a late add to that 2024 class, it's like, this guy's a pass rusher. I have no idea what's going on with your camera, but
sorry, this is stupid. All right, we're back. We're good.
Jordan Ochoa has made a move, and this is one of those names where coaches were absolutely not asked about him, but his name came up in interviews, and then people saw him as a pass rushing option from that jack linebacker spot during the practices on Friday and Saturday. And the commentary was like, oh, well, that's somebody who can play. So Nebraska has McGahee, and Nebraska has Dasan McCullough, the Oklahoma and Indiana transfer, at that spot. And it's very clear that there are going to be opportunities to get both of them on the field at the same time. But don't discount Jordan Ochoa as what appears right now to be the number 3 player at that position. And that just adds, like, already, just with the top 2, it is maybe the strongest position on the field where you have multiple players who are getting reps. I mean, I'd look at tight end, and I'd look at Jack Backer. Now there's a third who is emerged and is in the conversation to be able to play meaningful reps.
Well, I think there's an opportunity there. As we've talked about the defensive line just a whole bunch throughout this period of time, and they're turning over a lot. And so I think you sort of open it up. There's a bunch of guys in that room who we've talked about plenty before, but Ochoa, ever since the bowl game, I mean, he kind of just, honestly, I'm dead serious. It may have been the first time in my Nebraska football watching life that I was literally introduced to a player in the bowl game. I didn't know he was on the team, and that's probably more of a me thing. And then I'm like, whoa, this guy kind of popped a little bit for the little bit the spell that he played in the Pinstripe Bowl. And so that was one thing that I sort of thought about, like, is he really going to be in the conversation, or was that out of necessity? And then I kept hearing his name in the background, before the first week of camp, and then during the first week of camp. And then Rhule said it out loud on Saturday. He said, yeah, don't forget about people are sleeping on Jordan Ochoa at the moment. So that's promising. I think they need as many guys to be able to contribute in that room as they possibly can. There's still a concern about, like, how they're going to be able to stack up, and you won't know until you know. But the key right now is to get as many people as possible ready to play. And it sounds like Ochoa is absolutely a guy that's going to help him this year.
Yeah. Okay. We talked about Keona Davis. He's getting reps with the ones. He's made his move, a guy who went in the portal early in the offseason last year, and Nebraska got him to come out along with Emmett Johnson. We forget about that. So, like, there's a couple of extremely important pieces for Nebraska. Like, Emmett Johnson's not on this list because Emmett Johnson had already made his move. Like, his stock was up at the end of last season and through the entire offseason. We could have put him on this list, but for a running back, we wanted to go with Mekhi Nelson. Keona Davis is there. Like, he's going to play on that D line for sure. And then we'll finish this with 4 transfers, actually. 3 transfers and a true freshman. So Rocco Spindler, we've talked about. Like, I think he's the the spokesman. It's maybe not right, but like he's the most like out there. Wear it on his sleeve. Like if spokesman. Like if the offensive line needs somebody to speak up and get after them in the huddle, or come into the media room and say, we didn't live up to our standard today, whatever. I feel like Rocco has kind of assumed that role. So he's one of the transfers. Andrew Marshall is another one of those transfers who is in position now, I think, to claim that spot opposite Sierra Wright as a corner in the starting lineup. Although don't sleep on Donovan Jones, another one of those sophomores in the class of 2024 who's getting things done in the secondary. Like, a lot of high praise for Donovan Jones in the practice that he had on Saturday night. And then a transfer and then we have 2 special teams players, Archie Wilson and Kyle Cunanan. Why don't you tell me what you think about those 2?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we talked plenty about Archie Wilson at some point last week when Rhule mentioned it. So, I mean, I think this is an underlying, like, super interesting story, the place kicker battle. And it comes down to making kicks, but you also want to see the process. What is it? And it looked to most onlookers on Saturday night that Cunanan sort of was the leader there, but not only in terms of like the depth chart and how they do things, but just how the kicks looked, striking the ball. Thank you. So yeah, that's a great thing. We haven't really checked in on that kicker battle quite yet, but there's 3 guys who have. Well, I guess there's 2 guys who have kicked for Nebraska before, and the one guy who's leading hasn't kicked for Nebraska before. So kind of a fascinating one there.
Mike Eckler is he got clearance to do whatever he wanted to do with the special teams to make it work here and right away. Rhule said, you need a punter, go get a punter. You need a kicker, go get a kicker. Like, yes, we have players in the program who play these positions, but if they don't fit exactly what you need, or you need more options, like you want to change a scheme, go ahead and do it. So he's done all of that stuff. And if you had to make a choice right now, you had to, kind of like I said with Mekhi Nelson at RB2, who are the starting specialists on August 28th? I think clearly Archie Wilson is the guy at punter. He's a phenomenon all to himself, apparently. And then Cunanan and John Hole, there's a battle going on there, but Cunanan might have a leg up, so to speak, as we enter week 2 of preseason camp. All right, let's come back and tackle a few questions that remain. Plenty of questions remain, but a couple that are on our mind as Nebraska continues on in preseason camp. That's coming up next. Just a moment here to tell you about Gametime, and I want to ask if you've ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family. Maybe it's game day and suddenly you just realize that you want to be there in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. Gametime is the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. I was just checking out tickets on Gametime for Nebraska's opener on August 28th. At Arrowhead Stadium. I was with some family. I mentioned that we had a family event on Saturday night. It was kind of a whole weekend long thing that was going on. And some people were telling me that they would love to go to the Nebraska opener, but tickets were hard to come by. And I suggested going on Gametime and checking it out because there are seats available and you will find them if you sign on and look. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and it makes it simple. Prices on the app, in many instances, drop the closer you get to the beginning of the game. They've got last-minute deals. They show you clear seat views. There is a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. With baseball, Gametime is an official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB. That makes it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming Major League Baseball game like the Kansas City Royals when they return to Kauffman Stadium here on a streak of right now 4 consecutive series victories, maybe 5 after the Royals go into Fenway this week. You got seat views right there so you know where you'll be. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're back. Segment 3 of this Monday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you. Thank you for listening today. Thanks for following us. Check us out on YouTube or all of the podcast listening platforms. So we've been talking, Connor, about Nebraska's stock up players through the first week of preseason camp. Now some questions that we've got. You don't answer every question through 6 practices. Nebraska's on number 7 here on Monday. There are definitely situations that remain uncertain, and Matt Rhule talked on Saturday about how much work this team still has to do. Of course, lots of work to do. Saturday was the first day in full pads. They have 7 more days in full. Is it 8 more days, I believe, in full pads before the opening game. So what a small number of practices that you actually get in game-like situations where you're completely dressed. And he said that's part of the reason that you see a lot of sloppy football in the early season. Nebraska wants to avoid that. The first place I want to start is with that running back depth. We talked about the potential emergence of Mekhi Nelson, the injury to Quentin Ives. Jamarian Parker has not been out at practice so far this month. What else are you seeing from that position that either gives you pause or gives you confidence as we move toward week 2?
I'd call it probably too early to tell at this point. I don't think it's necessarily stock up or stock down. I think we kind of I haven't changed the way I'll just put it this way. Like, I haven't changed the way I felt about it at all coming into camp. I like I said, I think you have a number 1, you have a bunch of number 2s, and you have to figure out kind of who gets what carry. Maybe I think you go into the season with specific roles carved out for 2 and 3. And I think the leaders right there right now would be the aforementioned Mekhi Nelson. And then there would probably be a third down, like pass catching role for Isaiah Mosey at this point. But that's kind of it. I don't know that we know that for sure. That's certainly not cemented in any way, shape, or form. It just feels like they're kind of waiting for somebody to pop at that spot. But I can't tell you I feel any better about it, but I definitely don't feel any worse about it.
Should mention Connor Booth. I think it's worth a mention. The true freshman from Wahoo, who's done nothing but have success at that position throughout his football playing career. I get that he's coming from Class C in Nebraska, and the step up to the Big Ten is going to be significant. And you would think that a true freshman in that spot is going to need some time, but we'll see. He has looked good in practice, according to what people are saying, and probably just somebody to keep an eye on, have in the back of your mind. This may be the player when Matt Rhule and Dana Holgerson say you're often going to get down to your third and fourth running back. Like, he may be the guy who has to go into a game at some time when it's an important moment. And, we'll see how all of this preseason stuff helps him there. But I think they're feeling good about Connor Booth. The second question I want to ask is about the tight end group and the offensive line. Like, we get excited this time of year when you see big, fast, strong athletes out on the field. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, in that excitement, you can lose sight of the fact that all of these teams that are starting preseason practice that Nebraska is going to play against also have those big, strong, fast players. They've all been working hard in the summer. So,
great point.
Are Nebraska's tight ends actually at this level that is going to transform the position for Nebraska this year and turn them into a group like we've never seen play the spot? You would think that if you just took all of the talk that is out there in the media and at some of these interview sessions without a grain of salt. Like, I think we should probably take a step back when it comes to the tight ends. Like, they're good, they're strong, they're big, but like, let's take some small steps here instead of just like jumping up and saying that like there's all American candidates and they're going to have 2 all Big Ten tight ends. Same thing with the offensive line. Like, talk about the Joe Moore Award, like go out and like beat Michigan, win your first 6 games and run for, 200 yards and throw for 300 a game before we start getting down that road.
I am a Kool-Aid consumer on the offensive line. I think it's that group is ready. It's been a few years in the making, but there's depth, there's talent. You've supplemented it with transfers. You have a good offensive coordinator. I think you have a good position coach. You have leadership, and you have steady guys. Like, I am drinking the Kool-Aid on the offensive line. I don't know if they're going to be the best offensive line in the country. Like, that's up to other people, but I think they'll be very, very, very capable this season. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid on the tight end room. I just can't. There's like 15 combined catches there, a career. And you lost one after the first practice, and he came in with like 3. I did the math last week. It's like we're talking about under 200 yards basically of receiving yards with those tight ends, and that's not the whole game. I get it, but we're talking about a converted quarterback. And a guy who was playing 8-man football 2 years ago,
wide receiver last year.
Yeah, right. Wide receiver last year. So, and a guy who really, in Lindenmeyer, who's the top one, kind of was more of like a H-back, type of deal. And then inline blocker last year. So it's different for everybody. I'm just not there yet with the tight end group. Not to say that they can't be good or productive, but I can't go too overboard on that one. But O-line, I mean, you could convince me of a lot at that spot.
What you're banking on with the tight ends is that they're all going to make a huge jump.
Right.
Because you can see it with their ability. A couple of these guys may not make that big jump like until multiple years down the road. Like with Heinrich Harburg, it might come when he's in the NFL. Like when he gets into an NFL training camp and gets to devote even more time to mastering the position, like that may be when he makes his big jump. You may see him make 20 catches this year, 2 touchdowns, whatever. And that's enough to get him into the NFL because he runs a 4.48 at the combine and, has a 42-inch vertical jump. And I mean, like that'll get him in somewhere. So to think that it's like all going to come together this year in his first season of playing the position is probably too optimistic. So yep. I'm with you on the offensive line. We feel very good, I think, about the interior of that line with Lutovsky. This is from left to right. Lutovsky, Justin Evans, and Rocco Spindler. Mm-hmm. And then there's uncertainty, and not in a bad way. There's just a lot of mixing and matching at the tackle spots. At the beginning of camp, Gunnar Gatula was running with the ones at left tackle. Then on Saturday night, Elijah Pritchett had taken that role. Gatula's still he's going to be a big piece of it. And on the right side, you've had Tyler Kanak and Teddy Prohaska. seems to be like back in the mix. Like, knock on wood, he's staying healthy so far through a week of camp. So there's 4 guys right there who are in the mix for 2 spots at tackle. Like, I'm with you. I think it's going to be very good. Let's talk like really quick about the defensive line too, and how this is a question mainly about the way that Nebraska is going to use their defensive linemen and rotate those players at the top with Riley Van Poppel, Elijah Judy, Cam Lenhart, and Keona Davis.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I vacillate in between people are too hard on them, and I get it. So, like, they lost a lot from last year, but I just think this defense is going to be a little bit more geared toward what they have, and I think their strengths will be in other places. So, like, people are like, oh, well, you got to have the best. You have a really, really good defensive line in the Big Ten. I just don't think they'll have that right off the bat. We'll see. At the same time, I don't think you need. I mean, you're going to play teams that are going to have a tough time getting big on you and just ramming it at you. And I think Nebraska's strength of their defense is in the back. Maybe it's in the back 4, but it's in the back 7 for sure. Mm-hmm. And those guys will be helped out by the fact that the guys are really good around them. So that'll come along. I'm not concerned about it. How they use it is a really fascinating question, because I do think they have some mobility and some options there.
Yep. Great way to end the show, because on Tuesday, we're going to preview what we might hear later in the day from John Butler and Addison Williams, Nebraska's defensive coordinator, its former secondary coach, and then its current secondary coach will be talking, along with, I would expect, some defensive backs. So lots to break down on Tuesday, lots to go on the rest of this week too. We'll hear from more coaches, more players at Nebraska as they make it through the second week of preseason camp. Thanks today for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith is there with all of the information that you need to know about the portal on the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.